Hi guys, tonight, we travel back into the world's most forgotten history. Close your eyes, relax, and let your thoughts become as quiet as the waters of the Nile before sunrise. The night is still. The stars hang gently above the wide river, and a warm breeze moves across the reeds with almost no sound at all. Somewhere far away, a bird gives one sleepy call before settling again. The air carries the faint smell of wet earth mixed with dry sand. Nothing is hurried here. Nothing asks for your attention. Everything moves with quiet patience. This is a land where mornings have begun in almost the same way for longer than anyone could remember. Generations have come and gone beneath these same stars. Children have grown old. Families have filled simple homes with laughter, silence, and everyday work. The river has risen and fallen again and again, always returning as faithfully as the dawn itself. Ancient Egypt changed, of course. Every place does. Yet if someone could quietly walk from one village into another separated by hundreds of years, they might recognize far more than they expected. The smell of fresh bread. The sound of sandals brushing dusty streets. The careful rhythm of grinding grain. The low voices of neighbors greeting one another before the heat became too strong. Life carried forward with remarkable steadiness. And perhaps that is one of history's quietest mysteries. Why did ancient Egypt remain so familiar to itself for so many centuries? The answer is not hidden inside royal tombs alone. It is not found only beneath towering monuments or carved into the walls of temples. Instead, it lives inside ordinary mornings. It lives in hands rough from farming. In fishermen checking woven nets before sunrise. In women kneading dough beside clay ovens. In children carrying water jars almost too large for their small arms. In scribes carefully smoothing fresh sheets of papyrus before beginning another day's careful writing. The great kingdoms rested upon countless ordinary lives that followed gentle patterns day after day. To understand why Egypt stayed the same for so long, it helps to begin where almost everyone began. At home. Long before daylight reached the horizon, small villages rested quietly beside the Nile. Most homes were built from mud bricks shaped by hand. The walls were thick enough to keep out much of the afternoon heat. The roofs were flat. Some families slept beneath the open sky during the hottest months, where the night breeze offered a little comfort after long days beneath the sun. Inside these homes, furniture was simple. A low stool. A woven mat. Wooden chests holding carefully folded linen clothing. Clay jars stood quietly against the walls, storing grain, oil, dried vegetables, or precious drinking water. Nothing here was meant to impress visitors. Everything had a purpose. Every object had likely been repaired more than once. Nothing was thrown away without good reason. The first sounds of morning came softly. Someone stirred on a woven sleeping mat. A child rolled over before slowly opening sleepy eyes. An older family member quietly stepped outside while the stars still filled the sky. There was work to begin before the sun climbed too high. The cool hours before dawn were valuable. Soon smoke rose gently from clay ovens. The smell of baking bread slowly spread through narrow streets. It mixed with damp earth left by yesterday's watering, the scent of animals waking inside nearby pens, and the faint sweetness drifting from date palms. These familiar smells greeted each new day almost exactly as they had greeted countless mornings before. Perhaps this is where Egypt's remarkable steadiness truly began. Routine was comforting. Routine worked. Families knew what needed to be done because their parents had done it. Their grandparents had done it. Their great-grandparents had done it as well. Knowledge was not always written down. Much of it lived quietly inside memory. A father showed his son how deeply to press seeds into soft soil after the flood waters withdrew. A mother taught her daughter how long grain should be ground before becoming smooth flour. An older fisherman explained how changing winds gently moved fish through certain stretches of river. These lessons were repeated so often they became part of everyday life. No one thought of them as remarkable. They were simply the way things were done. The Nile itself encouraged this peaceful repetition. Every year, the river followed its ancient rhythm. Far to the south, seasonal rains filled distant lands. Weeks later, the water slowly rose through Egypt. Fields disappeared beneath gentle floods. The river left behind dark, rich soil unlike the pale desert stretching beyond its banks. When the water slowly withdrew, farmers stepped into fresh earth ready for planting. This cycle happened again. And again. And again. The calendar itself seemed to breathe alongside the river. People did not need to invent an entirely new way of living every generation. Nature already offered a dependable pattern. As long as the floods remained generous, families could trust the coming seasons. That trust became part of everyday thinking. It shaped villages. It shaped work. It even shaped hope. Imagine standing quietly beside the Nile just after sunrise. Mist still hangs lightly above the water. The first rays of sunlight turn the river into soft gold. A fisherman gently pushes his narrow wooden boat away from shore. The splash of his paddle is slow and steady. Nearby, another man checks woven baskets used to trap fish overnight. Neither speaks very much. There is no need. Each movement has become familiar through thousands of mornings. Farther inland, farmers walk toward fields carrying wooden tools across their shoulders. The earth beneath their sandals feels cool for only a little while. Soon the day's heat will arrive. But for now, there is peace. Birds move carefully among reeds. White flowers open beside quiet pools left behind by the flood. The air smells fresh. Soon voices begin rising from nearby villages. Children laugh softly while chasing one another between houses. Donkeys carry baskets filled with vegetables. Goats wander slowly through open spaces. Potters begin turning damp clay beneath practiced hands. Weavers prepare linen thread. Carpenters examine wood carefully before making their first cut. No loud signal announces the beginning of work. The village simply awakens together. Each person understands where they belong. This sense of belonging mattered deeply. When life follows dependable rhythms, people often feel connected to something larger than themselves. In ancient Egypt, daily work was not separate from the order of the world. Planting, harvesting, baking, building, weaving, fishing, carrying water, each task fit naturally into the larger rhythm created by the river, the seasons, and the rising sun. That quiet sense of order helped life remain stable across generations. Even children grew up surrounded by examples of careful repetition. A young boy might spend hours watching his father shape reeds into baskets. At first he only observed. Later he gathered materials. Years afterward his own fingers learned the same movements. Not because someone demanded change should never happen, but because these methods already worked well. Experience became one of Egypt's greatest treasures. Slowly, almost without noticing, each generation inherited not only tools but habits. Habits became traditions. Traditions became expectations. Expectations became part of everyday life. The houses themselves reflected this gentle continuity. When heavy rains were rare, mud brick walls could stand for many years if carefully maintained. Families repaired cracks instead of replacing entire homes. Fresh mud filled worn places. New bricks strengthened old foundations. The house slowly aged alongside the family living within it. Nothing needed to change quickly. Even meals carried familiar patterns. Bread remained the center of daily eating. Grain was ground patiently between heavy stones until becoming fine flour. The work demanded strength and endurance. The steady scraping sound echoed through many homes every morning. Water was mixed into the flour. Simple dough rested before being shaped. Clay ovens, already warm from earlier fires, slowly baked each loaf. The smell drifted into neighboring streets, joining countless other ovens doing exactly the same work. Alongside bread came onions, beans, lentils, dates, figs, and sometimes fish from the river. Beer made from grain was common as well, offering nourishment and safe drinking. These were not lavish meals. They were dependable meals. Dependability mattered more than variety. When food appeared each day in familiar forms, life itself felt reliable. Perhaps reliability is one of the quiet reasons Egypt endured so long. People often imagine history changing because kings issued commands. Sometimes they did. But much more often, history remained steady because ordinary people quietly continued living in ways that made sense. A farmer did not wake each morning hoping to invent a different way of planting. He hoped the river would rise. He hoped his family would remain healthy. He hoped enough grain would fill the storage jars before another flood season arrived. Those simple hopes changed very little across centuries. As the morning grows brighter, the village becomes busier. The sound of grinding stones mixes with distant hammering from workshops. Children carry bundles of reeds. Dogs wander sleepy streets searching for scraps. Smoke rises straight into the clear blue sky before disappearing into warm air. The desert beyond the fertile fields remains quiet and still. Its endless sands seem almost untouched by time. Standing between river and desert, the villages of Egypt occupy a narrow ribbon of life. Almost everything depends upon this precious strip of green. That narrow geography also encouraged continuity. There was little reason to spread far beyond the river. Most people lived close to water, close to fertile soil, close to neighbors who understood the same rhythms. Communities remained connected generation after generation. Stories traveled. Skills traveled. Customs traveled. Yet they changed only gently, like smooth stones shaped slowly by flowing water. The sun now climbs higher into the bright sky. The coolness of dawn begins to disappear. Workers wipe beads of sweat from their foreheads. Sandals leave faint marks across dusty paths. The day's labor has only just begun, and the steady heartbeat of ancient Egypt continues, quiet and patient, just as it has for countless mornings before. The warmth of the morning slowly settles over the land. The shadows that had stretched across the fields at dawn become shorter with every passing moment. The air grows heavier, carrying the familiar promise of another hot day. Dust rises gently beneath careful footsteps and then settles again, as though even the earth itself prefers calm over hurry. The village has now fully awakened. Doors made from woven reeds stand open to invite whatever breeze may wander through. Clay jars rest beneath shaded corners where water can stay a little cooler. Chickens scratch softly in the packed earth. A donkey pauses beside a wall, flicking its tail against patient flies before continuing toward the next courtyard. Nothing here feels rushed. Every person knows that the day is long. There is no need to hurry when tomorrow will ask for many of the same tasks. This quiet understanding shaped life in ancient Egypt more than any single law. Time itself felt different. The seasons returned. The river returned. The work returned. People measured life less by dramatic events and more by familiar cycles that gently repeated themselves. A child who watched grain being harvested one autumn would watch the same harvest again the following year. Then again. And again. Before long, the pattern became as ordinary as breathing. The repetition did not feel empty. Instead, it offered reassurance. When yesterday had gone well, there was comfort in believing tomorrow might unfold in much the same way. Along one narrow path leading toward the fields, a family walks together beneath the growing light. The father carries a wooden hoe worn smooth by years of steady use. His oldest son balances a bundle of rope over one shoulder. Two younger children follow behind, talking quietly as they carry baskets woven from river reeds. Their mother walks beside them with bread wrapped carefully inside linen cloth for the midday meal. The path beneath their feet has existed for generations. Thousands of sandals have worn its gentle curves. No one remembers who first walked here. No one needs to. The path belongs to everyone because it has always been there. Along its edges grow small plants that survive despite the dry air. Lizards disappear between stones whenever footsteps come too close. Tiny birds hop among reeds searching for insects stirred by passing travelers. The family reaches the edge of their field. Rich dark soil stretches before them. Not far away another family has already begun working. Someone raises a hand in greeting. A smile answers. Words are few. Morning is a time for beginning. The fields themselves are peaceful places. Rows of young grain move gently beneath the breeze. Irrigation channels guide precious water toward thirsty plants. Wooden tools lean against small earthen banks waiting to be used again after a short rest. The work is steady. Hands loosen soil. Feet press gently around growing plants. Water is directed with careful attention. Every movement carries experience gathered over many years. No written instructions are needed. Knowledge passes quietly through observation. Children watch adults. Adults once watched their own parents. The chain stretches farther back than memory. This simple way of learning became one of Egypt's greatest strengths. Skills remained close to home. There were schools for scribes and temples where sacred learning continued with great care, but for most people, the household was the first classroom. A little girl watched her grandmother shape dough before sunrise. She learned how the flour should feel between her fingers. She noticed how much water was added. She listened without realizing she was learning. Years later she would repeat the same motions almost without thinking. Not because someone forced tradition upon her, but because the movements lived naturally inside her memory. A young boy followed fishermen onto the river. At first he untangled ropes. Later he learned to throw nets. Eventually he understood where fish gathered when the current slowed beside the reeds. No single lesson explained everything. Thousands of ordinary mornings slowly formed his understanding. Learning was patient. The land itself encouraged patience. Across the fertile valley, life depended upon careful observation rather than sudden change. Farmers noticed clouds. They watched birds. They felt the moisture within the soil. They remembered which fields remained fertile longest after the floods. Such knowledge could not be rushed. It accumulated quietly through years spent paying attention. This slow gathering of wisdom became another reason Egypt remained familiar across centuries. People trusted what experience had already shown to be true. There was little desire to abandon methods that had fed families for generations. The sun climbs higher. Its light becomes bright enough to wash much of the color from distant sand. Heat begins rising from the earth itself. Workers tie linen cloth around their heads. Sweat gathers slowly along brows. Still, the work continues. There is rhythm in every movement. A hoe rises. It falls. Hands gather weeds. Water flows through narrow channels. Voices drift gently across neighboring fields. Sometimes conversation fades into silence. Silence does not feel uncomfortable here. It feels natural. The sounds of labor speak for themselves. Nearby, along the riverbank, fishermen are returning with their first catch of the day. Their boats glide quietly over calm water. The Nile seems almost endless. Its surface reflects both the clear sky above and the green plants growing along its banks. Papyrus reeds sway gently whenever the breeze arrives. Dragonflies skim across the water before disappearing among tall grasses. The fishermen know this river as one might know an old friend. Every bend carries familiar memories. They recognize hidden sandbanks. They understand changing currents. They know where fish gather after sunrise and where the water grows deeper as summer advances. The river asks for respect. It also rewards patience. One older fisherman pauses before pulling in his net. He watches the water for several quiet moments. His son waits without speaking. Finally the older man nods. Together they lift the heavy net into the boat. Silver fish flash briefly beneath the sunlight before settling quietly inside woven baskets. No celebration follows. Only satisfied smiles. Enough for today. Enough for the families waiting back in the village. Such moments happened countless times across the centuries. Morning after morning. Generation after generation. The river continued giving life. People continued receiving it with gratitude and care. Farther from the fields, another part of the village hums with quieter work. The potters have begun shaping fresh clay gathered from the riverbanks. One craftsman sits beneath a shaded roof where the air remains slightly cooler. His hands move with slow confidence. The spinning wheel turns beneath steady pressure. A lump of damp clay rises gently beneath his fingers. Soon it becomes a bowl. Another becomes a storage jar. Another becomes a drinking cup. Each piece resembles hundreds made before it. There is beauty in this familiarity. The shapes have changed very little because they serve their purpose well. Wide jars keep grain dry. Narrow-necked vessels protect valuable oil. Large pots store water brought from the river. Every household depends upon these simple objects. Their maker rarely signs his work. There is no need. His satisfaction comes from knowing the vessel will quietly serve another family for many years. Nearby, a carpenter smooths rough wood using simple tools made with copper blades. Wood is precious in Egypt. Large trees are uncommon. Many beams and fine timbers travel long distances before reaching workshops like his. Nothing is wasted. Every piece is carefully measured. Even the smallest offcuts may become pegs, handles, toys, or repairs for older furniture. The carpenter pauses often to examine the grain. He does not hurry his work. Good craftsmanship grows slowly. His apprentice watches closely. The older man says little. He demonstrates. The younger man observes. Learning happens through shared hours rather than long explanations. By afternoon the apprentice understands a little more than he did that morning. The same quiet education continues day after day. This gentle passing of knowledge shaped nearly every craft throughout Egypt. The baker. The weaver. The stone worker. The basket maker. The brewer. Each depended upon patient repetition. New ideas appeared from time to time, but they entered a world that deeply respected methods already proven reliable. Stability was not simply accepted. It was valued. It brought security. It reduced uncertainty. It allowed communities to trust that tomorrow could be met with familiar skills. As the heat becomes stronger, many workers pause briefly beneath whatever shade they can find. Perhaps beneath a sycamore tree. Perhaps beside a mud brick wall. Perhaps beneath a simple woven shelter built beside the fields. Bread is shared. Dates are passed from hand to hand. A clay jar of cool water moves quietly among family members. Conversations remain gentle. Someone speaks about repairing part of a roof before the next flood season. Another wonders whether a neighbor's daughter will soon marry. Children listen while eating. A baby sleeps peacefully against its mother's shoulder. These quiet meals are as important as the labor itself. They remind everyone that work exists to support home. Home remains the center around which everything else gently turns. When evening finally arrives, workers will return carrying tired muscles and dusty sandals. Tomorrow they will leave again before sunrise. The rhythm is demanding. It is also deeply familiar. Perhaps this is one of the hidden reasons ancient Egypt endured for so long. The stability of the kingdom was not built only by rulers sitting upon carved thrones. It rested upon millions of ordinary decisions made every single day. A farmer choosing to plant as his father had planted. A potter shaping another storage jar exactly as his teacher had shown him. A fisherman trusting the quiet wisdom of the river. A child watching carefully, preparing without realizing it to continue the same gentle traditions many years later. The great monuments that still stand today began long before the first stone was lifted. They began here. In ordinary homes. Beside warm ovens. Along dusty village paths. Within peaceful workshops filled with the soft sounds of patient hands. And as the afternoon sun continues its slow journey across the Egyptian sky, these quiet routines become almost as timeless as the river itself, carrying another ordinary day gently forward into the next. The afternoon settles gently over the valley. The bright light of midday softens just enough to reveal small details that had disappeared beneath the strongest heat. Tiny insects drift above the irrigation canals. The breeze, though still warm, returns in quiet moments from the direction of the river. Palm leaves move with a slow whisper that is almost too gentle to hear. The day's work continues. No bell announces the passing of the hours. No clock marks the afternoon. Instead, people notice the changing position of the sun. They feel the warmth against their skin. They watch the length of shadows stretching little by little across the earth. Time is measured by the sky itself, just as it has been for countless generations. This way of living encourages patience. There is little reason to hurry when the day unfolds according to the steady rhythm of nature. The river has its own time. The fields have their own time. Even the growing grain asks only for quiet care and enough days beneath the sun. For the people of Egypt, waiting was not unusual. It was simply part of life. Seeds did not appear as crops overnight. Bread did not begin as flour. A house was not built in a single afternoon. Everything worthy of lasting took time. This simple understanding quietly shaped the character of the civilization. A farmer kneels beside a narrow channel carrying water into his field. With a wooden tool, he gently clears away a small pile of mud that has gathered during the morning. At once, the water changes direction, flowing exactly where it is needed. He watches carefully for several moments, making only tiny adjustments. His work seems small. Perhaps almost invisible. Yet without thousands of moments like this, the fields would dry, the harvest would weaken, and the village would struggle. Much of Egypt's strength came from countless ordinary tasks that were never celebrated. Quiet work often leaves the deepest marks upon history. Nearby, another farmer guides a pair of oxen through soft soil. The animals move with slow determination, their broad shoulders shining beneath the afternoon light. Dust rises around their steady feet before settling once more. The farmer speaks only a few calm words. The oxen already know the path. This partnership has existed for generations. Children have watched these same scenes since before memory could reach. Grandparents once stood in the very same fields. Their parents did as well. The earth remembers every season. As the hours pass, voices from neighboring fields drift gently through the warm air. People call to one another across the narrow banks separating one family's land from another. They exchange news about crops. Someone asks after an elderly neighbor whose legs have grown weak. Another offers help repairing an irrigation gate before tomorrow's work begins. These conversations are simple. They are filled with ordinary concerns. Yet within them lives something very important. Community. No household stands entirely alone. The river belongs to everyone. The canals require shared effort. Floods must be understood together. Harvests often depend upon neighbors helping one another during busy weeks. Life becomes more stable when people trust those living beside them. That trust grows slowly. It cannot be rushed. It is built through many ordinary years. As one season follows another, familiar faces become part of the landscape itself. Children grow together. Families celebrate births together. They mourn losses together. They repair homes together after strong winds or heavy floods. The village becomes more than a collection of houses. It becomes an extended family woven together by shared routines. Perhaps this quiet closeness is another reason Egypt remains so steady. When communities are deeply connected, sudden change becomes less likely. People naturally protect the customs that have helped everyone live peacefully. Not because they fear something new, but because they already understand the value of what they have. Farther along the riverbank, a young scribe sits beneath the shade of a sycamore tree. His work is very different from that of the farmers. His hands are clean compared with those carrying hoes and baskets. Before him lies a carefully prepared sheet of papyrus. Beside it rests a small wooden palette holding black and red ink. Several reed pens have been trimmed with great care. The young man bends slightly forward. Each symbol must be written with patience. Each mark carries meaning. There is no room for careless movement. His teacher watches from nearby without speaking. Only after several quiet moments does the older man gently point toward one line. A small correction. Nothing more. The younger scribe nods respectfully. Then he begins again. Writing itself reflects the same values found throughout Egyptian life. Accuracy. Patience. Careful repetition. Students spend years practicing the same signs until their hands remember every movement. The lessons rarely change. The symbols passed down by earlier generations continue to be taught. In this way, knowledge remains stable. Records remain understandable. Traditions remain connected across lifetimes. A written account copied carefully today may resemble one written centuries before. Not because imagination is absent, but because continuity is deeply respected. Nearby, inside another workshop, women sit together weaving linen. Sunlight filters through small openings in the mudbrick walls, creating soft lines across the floor. The steady sound of wooden looms fills the room. Thread passes over and under again. Hands move almost without thought. One woman hums a quiet melody that her own mother once sang during long afternoons like this. Another smiles softly while listening. No one performs for an audience. The music simply accompanies the rhythm of work. Children play quietly in one corner. Occasionally a small hand reaches toward loose thread before being gently guided elsewhere with patient laughter. The older women continue weaving. Their fingers know every motion. The cloth slowly grows longer. Piece by piece. Hour by hour. Like so much else in Egypt, beautiful things are created through steady repetition rather than sudden inspiration. Outside, merchants begin preparing for tomorrow's market. Large baskets are inspected. Clay jars are sealed. Bundles of onions, garlic, and fresh vegetables are tied securely with woven cords. A man carefully counts small pieces of copper used for trade. Another examines a shipment of dried fish brought from farther down the river. Trade has long connected villages throughout the Nile Valley. Boats move steadily between communities carrying grain, stone, linen, pottery, timber, and countless other necessities. The river serves not only as a source of water but also as the Great Road of Egypt. Travel by land is often slower beneath the desert sun. The Nile offers a gentler path. Its current carries boats northward. Its winds help sails return south. This dependable highway allows customs, language, and traditions to remain closely connected across remarkable distances. People living many days apart often recognize familiar tools, familiar clothing, familiar foods, and familiar ways of speaking. The river quietly ties the kingdom together. As the afternoon slowly gives way toward evening, the light begins to soften. The harsh brightness fades into warmer colors. Long shadows stretch across fields where farmers finish the last tasks of the day. Tools are cleaned before being carried home. Loose bundles of reeds are gathered. Water channels receive one final careful inspection. No one wishes to begin tomorrow with unnecessary repairs. The walk back to the village is slower than the journey that morning. The day's labor rests heavily upon tired shoulders. Sandals carry a thin layer of dust. Hands are rough with work. Yet there is also quiet satisfaction. The fields have been tended. The animals have been fed. The river continues flowing beside them as faithfully as ever. Children run ahead, their energy not yet spent. One little boy balances carefully along the edge of an irrigation bank before jumping into the soft earth with delighted laughter. His older sister carries a small basket nearly half her own size. She smiles proudly when her mother thanks her for helping. Simple moments like these fill the spaces between history's larger events. Kings may build temples. Officials may collect taxes. Priests may perform sacred ceremonies. But civilizations endure because families continue living ordinary lives. Because bread is baked. Because roofs are repaired. Because children learn from parents. Because neighbors greet one another every morning. These quiet actions rarely appear carved into stone. Yet they are the foundation beneath everything else. As smoke begins rising once more from village ovens, the familiar scent of fresh bread returns to the streets. Women prepare evening meals while speaking softly with neighbors standing just outside their doorways. Goats return to their small enclosures. Donkeys lower their heads gratefully toward fresh bundles of straw. Birds settle among palm branches overlooking the river. The village grows calmer with every passing moment. The air finally begins to cool. Not by much. Only enough for tired bodies to breathe a little more easily. Families gather together. Some sit upon woven mats outside their homes where the evening breeze reaches them first. Others remain indoors, where thick mud brick walls still hold a little shade from the afternoon. Children eat sleepily after a long day. An elderly grandfather tells a quiet story he first heard when he himself was young. No one interrupts. There is comfort in hearing familiar tales once again. The story has been told many times before. It will be told many times again. Just as the river continues its endless journey, so too do these simple traditions flow gently from one generation into the next, carrying with them the quiet habits, shared memories, and patient ways of living that helped ancient Egypt remain wonderfully familiar to itself for centuries beyond counting. Evening settles across the Nile with such gentle patience that it is difficult to notice exactly when the day begins to let go. The bright gold of afternoon slowly becomes soft amber. The western sky glows for a while above the distant desert, where endless sand hills rest beneath fading light. One by one, long shadows disappear into one another until the edges of fields, roads, and houses become quiet shapes against the earth. The day's labor is over. For now. The fields no longer echo with the steady scrape of wooden hoes or the careful footsteps of workers moving between rows of grain. Boats that spent the day upon the river drift back toward familiar banks. Their sails hang loose in the calmer evening air. Fishermen secure ropes with practiced hands before lifting baskets onto their shoulders. There is no celebration marking the end of work. There is simply the comforting knowledge that another honest day has been completed. The village breathes more slowly now. Smoke rises from hundreds of cooking fires. Its scent carries through narrow streets lined with mud-brick walls that still hold the warmth of the sun. The smell of baking bread returns once again, joined by onions cooking in clay pots, fresh herbs crushed beneath careful hands, and fish roasting above glowing coals. These smells belong to home. After hours beneath the open sky, they welcome tired workers back into familiar spaces. A young girl kneels beside a grinding stone. She places another handful of grain between the heavy stones and begins turning them with slow, steady effort. The work is not easy. Her arms grow tired. Fine flour gathers little by little beneath the stone. Her mother glances over with a gentle smile. Not because the work is finished, but because it is being learned. There is no hurry to master such tasks. Each evening offers another chance to practice. One day the daughter will guide younger hands just as patiently. Across the courtyard, an elderly woman sits quietly weaving a small basket from fresh reeds gathered earlier that week. Her fingers move almost without thought. The reeds bend. They cross. They tighten. The basket slowly takes shape. She does not need to count each movement. Years of practice have placed the knowledge deep inside her hands. Nearby, two small children watch for a few moments before becoming distracted by smooth pebbles scattered across the ground. Soon they are arranging them into little patterns, inventing simple games beneath the evening sky. Their laughter is gentle. Even joy here feels peaceful. No one raises their voice. The village is preparing itself for rest. As darkness approaches, neighbors gather outside their homes where the air is cooler than it was only a short time before. Some sit upon low wooden stools. Others rest on woven mats spread across the packed earth. Conversations begin quietly. They are not grand discussions about distant rulers or events far away. Instead, people speak about the things nearest to their hearts. A field that needs more water. A roof that should be repaired before the next flood season. A child whose first tooth has fallen. An elderly neighbor whose knees have become stiff after many years of working the fields. These conversations may seem ordinary. In truth, they are the threads that hold a community together. Every shared concern reminds people that they belong to one another. In villages like these, everyone notices when someone is absent. Everyone recognizes familiar footsteps approaching down the lane. Everyone remembers which family bakes the sweetest bread or keeps the strongest goats. Life becomes deeply connected through years of quiet familiarity. That familiarity creates trust. Trust creates stability. And stability, repeated over countless generations, becomes one of the hidden foundations of an enduring civilization. As twilight deepens, the sounds of the village begin changing. The busy rhythm of labor fades. Now there are softer sounds. The gentle creaking of wooden doors. The low murmur of evening conversation. The occasional bray of a donkey settling for the night. The flutter of birds choosing safe branches among the palms. Somewhere nearby, a baby begins to cry. Only for a moment. A mother's comforting voice quickly replaces the tears. Soon the child sleeps once more. Above everything else flows the quiet voice of the Nile. Its waters never truly become silent. Tiny waves touch muddy banks with steady rhythm. Reeds sway against one another. Water birds call from hidden places among the marshes before growing quiet themselves. For many families, these sounds have accompanied every night of their lives. A child falls asleep listening to the river. Years later, as an adult, those same sounds still promise safety and home. Perhaps no other feature shaped Egypt more deeply than this faithful river. Its presence reached into every part of daily life. Not only through farming and travel, but through memory itself. Every family carried stories connected to the Nile. Grandparents remembered especially generous floods. Parents remembered difficult years when the waters rose less than expected. Children learned early to watch the changing shoreline. The river became almost like another member of every household. Dependable. Powerful. Always deserving respect. Nearby, inside a modest home, an oil lamp flickers softly against whitewashed walls. Its small flame dances whenever the evening breeze slips through the doorway. The light is gentle. It does not fill the room. Instead, it creates warm circles of brightness surrounded by quiet shadows. A family shares their evening meal. Fresh bread is broken into pieces and passed from hand to hand. Bowls of lentils rest upon a low table. There are onions, figs, and roasted fish caught only hours before. The meal is simple. It does not need to be anything else. After a full day's work, familiar food brings quiet comfort. Conversation comes slowly. No one feels the need to speak constantly. Long hours beneath the sun have left everyone pleasantly tired. Sometimes silence itself becomes another way of sharing time together. A grandfather reaches for a cup of beer brewed from grain. Its flavor is mild and nourishing. He drinks slowly before beginning a story from his youth. His voice is calm. The children have heard parts of this story before. Still they listen carefully. Each telling is slightly different. Small details appear that were forgotten before. Perhaps tonight he remembers the smell of fresh reeds beside the river. Perhaps he recalls the coolness of flood water around his ankles during harvest season. Stories grow gently with the people who tell them. Most families carry memories this way. Not through written records. Not through carved monuments. But through evenings like these. Parents speak. Children listen. Years later, the children become parents. The stories continue their quiet journey through time. In another home, a young man repairs a pair of leather sandals by the light of a small lamp. The soles have grown thin after many months of walking dusty roads. Rather than making new sandals, he carefully stitches fresh leather onto the old pair. Nothing useful is wasted. Every object has value. Wood, leather, linen, rope, clay all require labor to create. Repair is often wiser than replacement. This habit of careful maintenance reaches far beyond household tools. Homes are repaired. Canals are repaired. Boats are repaired. Even relationships are gently tended through kindness, shared work, and mutual respect. Perhaps civilizations endure longest when people care patiently for what already exists. Outside, the first stars begin appearing overhead. The desert sky is remarkably clear. Without bright lights to compete against them, countless stars fill the heavens. They seem almost close enough to touch. Children look upward with quiet wonder. Their parents do the same. The sky above them is the same sky their ancestors watched. The same stars rise. The same moon crosses the heavens. The heavens themselves seem to promise that tomorrow will arrive just as faithfully as today has ended. For people living beside the Nile, this sense of continuity reaches into every part of existence. The earth follows its seasons. The river follows its flood. The sky follows its eternal paths. Human life naturally settles into these larger rhythms. There is comfort in belonging to something so dependable. Night grows deeper. One by one, oil lamps are gently extinguished. Families spread woven mats across cool floors or climb carefully onto flat rooftops where the evening breeze moves more freely. Children are asleep almost before they finish closing their eyes. Their long day of running, helping, carrying, learning, and exploring has left them wonderfully tired. Adults remain awake a little longer. They speak softly beneath the stars. Sometimes they say very little at all. The quiet itself is enough. Tomorrow morning will come early. Bread will once again fill the air with its comforting scent. The river will continue its patient journey northward. Farmers will return to the fields. Fishermen will untie their boats. Potters will shape fresh clay. Scribes will sharpen new reed pens. Every ordinary task will begin again, not because people lack imagination, but because these steady rhythms have woven themselves into every corner of Egyptian life, creating a civilization whose greatest strength is not constant change, but the quiet confidence that another peaceful day beside the Nile will gently unfold much like the one before it. Morning returns so quietly that the village seems to awaken before anyone truly notices the change. The eastern horizon slowly fills with pale light. At first it is only a gentle silver resting above the distant desert. Then the sky becomes soft shades of rose and gold. The stars disappear one by one, fading without hurry, while the moon slips lower toward the western hills. The Nile reflects every color. Its calm surface changes from deep blue to warm amber as the first sunlight reaches the water. Tiny ripples spread outward where fish rise for only a moment before disappearing again beneath the gentle current. A heron stands perfectly still near the reeds, waiting with endless patience. The river has welcomed another day. Just as it did yesterday. Just as it did countless years before. Before the first loaf of bread is baked, before the first voice calls across a field, before the first boat leaves the shore, the Nile is already awake. It has always seemed older than memory itself. For the people who live beside it, the river is not merely a place. It is the steady heartbeat around which life quietly gathers. Long before anyone speaks of kings or temples, they speak of the flood. Long before children understand the names of distant cities, they learn the moods of the river. Its quiet rhythm shapes every household. Its dependable return shapes every hope. As dawn brightens, the village begins to stir. A wooden door opens with a familiar creak. Someone steps barefoot onto the cool earth before slipping into worn leather sandals. The air still carries a pleasant freshness that will soon disappear beneath the heat of another summer day. An elderly man pauses outside his home. He stretches slowly, listening. He hears birds hidden among the date palms. He hears water flowing through nearby canals. He hears a donkey shaking sleep from its body. These sounds have greeted him every morning for more years than he can easily count. They are so familiar that he no longer thinks about them. Yet if they were suddenly absent, the silence would feel strange. Routine often becomes invisible. Only when it changes do people notice how deeply it has shaped their lives. Across the courtyard, a young mother has already begun preparing the morning meal. She kneels beside a clay oven blackened by years of careful use. The fire glows softly beneath fresh pieces of dry wood. She places flattened rounds of dough onto the warm surface with practiced hands. The smell of rising bread slowly spreads through the cool morning air. A little boy follows closely behind her, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He watches every movement. He asks a quiet question. His mother smiles before answering. She explains how the dough must rest before it is baked. How the oven must become hot enough. How patience makes better bread. The lesson is simple. Tomorrow he may remember only part of it. Next year he will remember more. One day, without thinking, his own hands may repeat the very same movements. This is how traditions often survive. Not through grand ceremonies. Not through written commands. But through ordinary mornings shared between parents and children. Knowledge passes gently from one generation to another, almost as naturally as breathing. Nearby, an older daughter carries 2 empty clay jars toward the river. The path is already becoming busy. Women from neighboring homes walk together in quiet conversation. Some balance jars upon their heads with remarkable ease. Others carry woven baskets filled with laundry waiting to be washed along the riverbank. Children skip ahead, stopping now and then to watch tiny insects hovering above the reeds. The journey is familiar. Every stone in the path seems known. The women greet one another warmly. They speak about the weather. About an aging goat that has stopped giving milk. About a wedding expected after the next harvest. No one rushes these conversations. The work will still be waiting. There is time to exchange kind words. There is time to ask after someone's family. The water jars will soon be full. The river is patient. At the riverbank, morning light sparkles across the surface like scattered pieces of polished copper. The women kneel carefully near the edge, filling their jars while trying not to disturb the soft mud beneath the water. Some begin washing linen clothing against smooth stones. The steady rhythm of wet cloth striking rock becomes part of the morning's quiet music. Nearby, children splash only where the current is gentle enough for safety. An older woman reminds them not to wander too far. Her voice is calm. She has spoken the same words many times before. Generations of mothers have likely offered the same gentle warning. Across the river, fields stretch toward the horizon in long ribbons of green. Workers are already gathering. Some carry hoes over their shoulders. Others lead oxen toward freshly watered land. Their silhouettes move slowly through the early sunlight, almost like figures painted upon the landscape. Watching them from a distance, it would be difficult to know which century has arrived. Many of their tools resemble those used by grandparents and great-grandparents. Their clothing is much the same. Their purpose remains unchanged. The work waiting before them is familiar. And because it is familiar, they begin with quiet confidence. Confidence grows from repetition. When people know what each season requires, uncertainty becomes smaller. When yesterday's work resembles today's work, there is comfort in experience. This does not mean life is always easy. Far from it. The heat can become overwhelming. Illness sometimes visits a household without warning. Floods may rise too high or not high enough. Crops can fail. Animals may become sick. Families know hardship. Yet even during difficult years, the familiar rhythm of life provides something steady to hold onto. When uncertainty appears, routine offers reassurance. People still bake bread. They still tend fields. They still gather at sunset. They still tell stories beneath the stars. The ordinary habits of life become quiet anchors during uncertain times. Perhaps this explains part of Egypt's remarkable endurance. Its strength was not built upon the absence of hardship. It was built upon the presence of dependable routines that help people continue despite hardship. As the morning advances, the marketplace slowly begins to fill. It is not a grand square surrounded by magnificent buildings. It is simply an open space where neighbors gather to exchange goods, news, and conversation. Merchants arrive carrying woven baskets balanced across sturdy shoulders. Potters carefully unload fresh vessels, arranging them in neat rows upon woven mats. Their surfaces catch the growing sunlight, revealing smooth curves shaped by patient hands. Nearby, a woman displays bundles of onions, garlic, lentils, and herbs gathered from nearby gardens. The colors are gentle. Green leaves. Golden grain. Brown baskets. Red clay. Nothing shines brightly. Everything belongs naturally to the earth. The marketplace is filled with movement, yet it never feels hurried. People pause often. They examine goods carefully. They greet old friends before discussing prices. Children weave between adults carrying messages from one family member to another. A dog naps peacefully beneath the shade of a cart, lifting one ear whenever footsteps pass nearby. An elderly merchant recognizes nearly everyone who approaches. He remembers which household recently welcomed a new baby. He remembers whose son has begun learning to carve wood. He remembers which farmer's harvest was especially good the previous season. Trade here is more than exchange. It is another thread holding the community together. Relationships matter as much as goods. Trust has been built through years of honest dealings. A handshake means something because it rests upon shared history. Elsewhere, inside a shaded workshop, a stonemason carefully examines a block of limestone. His work demands patience unlike almost any other craft. He studies the surface before lifting his copper chisel. The first strike is gentle. Another follows. Tiny fragments fall onto the ground. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the rough stone begins changing shape. Hours may pass before anyone else notices the difference. The mason does not mind. He understands that careful work is never hurried. His apprentice watches closely. The older craftsman occasionally adjusts the younger man's grip or demonstrates a smoother motion with the hammer. Little is explained through long speeches. Almost everything is learned through observation. Again and again. Day after day. Season after season. This quiet method of teaching appears everywhere in Egyptian life. The baker teaches through baking. The fisherman teaches upon the river. The farmer teaches in the fields. The weaver teaches beside the loom. The mason teaches through stone. Knowledge lives inside shared labor. Because of this, traditions remain remarkably consistent across generations. Children inherit not only their parents' occupations but also their parents' habits, rhythms, and ways of seeing the world. The civilization changes, of course. New rulers come. New buildings rise. Different officials take their places. But beneath those visible changes, ordinary life continues with astonishing steadiness. The same river flows. The same bread bakes. The same fields are planted. The same evening breeze cools tired faces after long hours beneath the sun. And as another peaceful morning gently unfolds across the Nile Valley, countless ordinary people continue shaping the quiet foundation of one of history's longest-lasting civilizations, not through dramatic moments remembered in royal records, but through patient hands, familiar routines, and the comforting certainty that tomorrow's sunrise will once again find them living in harmony with the timeless rhythm of the river. The marketplace grows busier as the sun climbs higher into the clear Egyptian sky. What began as a quiet gathering at sunrise has slowly become the gentle heart of the village. Voices drip through the warm air, never becoming loud, but blending together into a steady murmur that rises and falls like the river itself. There is no rush. People know one another well. Many have traded together for years, perhaps even for decades. Some remember standing here as children, holding a parent's hand while watching baskets of grain change hands or listening to older neighbors speak about the coming flood season. Now they stand in the very same place as adults. The faces around them have changed little by little over the years. Some have grown older. Some are no longer here. Others are young enough to remember only the stories told by their grandparents. Yet the marketplace itself feels almost unchanged. Its familiar rhythm welcomes each generation in exactly the same quiet way. A merchant carefully lifts the woven cloth covering his basket. Inside are fresh dates gathered only yesterday. Their deep brown skins shine softly beneath the morning light. Nearby, another merchant arranges bundles of papyrus stems. Some will become writing material. Others will be woven into mats, baskets, sandals, or simple household items. Very little from the river goes unused. Its gifts appear everywhere. Even the ropes securing boats along the riverbank may have begun as plants growing quietly beside the water. A woman pauses before a potter's display. She gently lifts a small clay bowl into both hands. She turns it slowly, feeling its smooth surface with careful fingers. She notices the even curve of its rim. The weight feels balanced. The clay has been fired well. The bowl will likely serve her family for many years. She smiles. The potter smiles back. Very few words are needed. Both understand the quiet satisfaction of good workmanship. In Egypt, everyday objects are expected to last. A storage jar is not made for a single season. A basket is not woven with the expectation that it will soon be thrown away. Sandals are repaired. Furniture is repaired. Fishing nets are repaired. Boats are repaired. The care given to these simple things reflects a larger way of thinking. When something still serves its purpose, it deserves respect. Perhaps this attitude reached beyond objects. Perhaps it also shaped traditions. Customs that continued to serve the community remained in place. There was little desire to replace what generations had already proven dependable. Not because people feared change itself, but because trust had been built slowly, and trust is not easily abandoned. Beyond the marketplace, a narrow path leads toward a cluster of workshops standing beneath the shade of several tall sycamore trees. The air here smells different. Instead of fresh bread and vegetables, there is the scent of cut wood, damp clay, leather, and warm stone. Each workshop contributes quietly to village life. Each depends upon skilled hands. Inside one open building, a leather worker sits cross-legged upon a woven mat. Pieces of softened hide lie neatly arranged around him. An awl rests beside a small knife polished smooth through years of careful use. He examines an old sandal brought by one of the farmers. The straps have become thin. The stitching has loosened. The sole shows the marks of countless journeys across dusty roads. The leather worker studies it for a moment. There is no reason to make an entirely new pair. The old sandals still have many seasons left within them. With patient movements, he removes the worn stitching and begins again. Each new stitch passes neatly through the leather. Strong. Even. Reliable. The farmer watches with quiet appreciation. Good craftsmanship saves both time and precious materials. Nearby, another craftsman carves a wooden handle for a farming tool. Wood is too valuable to waste through careless cutting. He turns the piece slowly in his hands, following the natural lines within the grain. His knife removes only small curls at a time. The floor beneath him is scattered with fragrant wood shavings. The scent fills the workshop. An apprentice gathers the shavings into neat piles. Nothing useful is ignored. Some pieces will help start evening cooking fires. Others may be used for small repairs. Every resource is treated with care. This careful use of materials reflects the landscape itself. Beyond the fertile valley stretches an immense desert. The contrast is impossible to ignore. The green fields beside the Nile are generous. The desert beyond is silent. Its endless sands remind everyone how precious the river truly is. Life depends upon making wise use of what the land provides. Waste would be difficult to understand. The desert quietly teaches restraint. The river quietly teaches gratitude. Together they shape the character of those who live between them. As the morning continues, several boys walk toward the riverside carrying fishing nets much larger than themselves. An older fisherman walks ahead, his pace slow enough that the children easily keep up. He says very little. Instead, he points. A bend in the river. A patch of reeds. The changing movement of the current. The boys look carefully. Some details seem unimportant now. Years later they will remember them. Learning often begins with noticing. The fisherman kneels near the water's edge. He lifts a handful of wet mud. Holding it between his fingers, he explains how the flood left this rich soil behind. The boys listen closely. One reaches down and touches the earth himself. It feels cool despite the growing warmth of the day. The fisherman smiles. No written lesson could replace this moment. The river itself becomes the classroom. Nearby, several girls help gather bundles of papyrus growing thick along the shoreline. The tall green stems sway gently whenever the breeze arrives. Each plant will serve many purposes. Some will become baskets. Others will become mats spread across cool floors. The finest pieces may eventually become smooth sheets for writing. The children work carefully. Their mothers show them which stems are ready to cut. Too young, and they are weak. Too old, and they become brittle. Good judgment develops slowly. Experience teaches what hurried instruction cannot. Back in the village, the steady sound of weaving continues inside shaded homes. The rhythm of wooden looms almost resembles quiet breathing. Forward. Back. Lift. Pull. The cloth grows little by little. One young woman pauses to straighten a loose thread. Her grandmother notices before saying a single word. She reaches over with gentle hands and smooths the linen. The correction is small. The lesson is silent. The younger woman nods. No embarrassment passes between them. Only understanding. This is how skills survive. Patient guidance. Careful observation. Respect offered without harshness. Many generations have learned this way. Many more will do the same. Outside, the sunlight grows stronger. The stones beneath bare feet become warm. Children seek patches of shade beneath palm trees. Goats gather beside cool mud-brick walls where the afternoon heat has not yet reached. Birdsong becomes less frequent. Even the animals understand that the hottest hours are approaching. The village adjusts naturally. Work slows where it can. Those laboring in open fields pause more often to drink cool water stored in clay jars. Craftsmen working indoors continue beneath shaded roofs. No one argues with the sun. It has followed the same path across the sky for longer than memory. People simply learn to move with it rather than against it. This willingness to adapt to nature instead of resisting it quietly shaped Egyptian life. The river determined the farming seasons. The sun determined the working hours. The flood determined the planting. The harvest determined the celebrations. Rather than forcing the land to obey them, people learned to understand its rhythms. That understanding became tradition. Tradition became habit. Habit became culture. And culture, passed gently from parents to children over hundreds of years, became one of the strongest reasons that life in ancient Egypt could remain so wonderfully familiar across the centuries. As the warm breeze once again drifts across the Nile, carrying the scent of fresh water, reeds, and distant fields, another ordinary morning slowly becomes another ordinary afternoon, adding one more peaceful day to a story that has already been unfolding for countless generations beside the timeless river. By the time the sun reaches its highest place in the sky, the valley has become quiet in a different way. The busy sounds of the morning do not disappear, but they soften. Conversations become shorter. Footsteps slow. Even the birds seem content to rest among the thick leaves of sycamore and palm, where the shade offers relief from the growing heat. The air itself feels heavy. It shimmers gently above stone paths and open fields. In the distance, the horizon seems almost to ripple where warm air rises from the desert beyond the fertile valley. For the people of ancient Egypt, this warmth is not unusual. It arrives every year. Every season has its own familiar feeling. The coolness before sunrise. The bright freshness of early morning. The powerful heat of midday. The welcome breeze of evening. Life has been shaped around these moments for longer than anyone can remember. No one expects the land to become cooler simply because they wish it. Instead, they quietly arrange their work to move alongside the day. Farmers finish the hardest labor before the sun becomes too fierce. Builders carry the heaviest stones while the morning shadows are still long. Boats often leave the shore before dawn, when the river is calm and the air is gentle. This way of living is not written into law. It is written into experience. Thousands upon thousands of ordinary days have taught the same lesson. Nature is the oldest teacher in Egypt. Its lessons are repeated patiently until no one remembers learning them. Near the edge of the village, a group of builders rests beneath a simple shelter made from wooden poles and woven reeds. Their morning has been filled with lifting limestone blocks, shaping rough surfaces, and carrying tools from one place to another. Now they sit together in the shade. Their linen clothing is darkened with sweat. Dust covers their hands and settles into the folds of their sandals. One man drinks slowly from a clay cup filled with cool water. Another tears a loaf of bread into equal pieces, passing them around without a word. Nearby lies a small basket holding onions, dates, and a little dried fish. The meal is modest. No one complains. Simple food has sustained workers for generations. It fills the stomach. It restores strength. It asks for little. As they eat, conversation begins quietly. One builder speaks about repairing the roof of his house before the next flood season. Another wonders whether enough reeds have been gathered for new sleeping mats. A younger man asks an older worker how long he has been shaping stone. The older man smiles before answering. "So long," he says softly, "that my hands remember before my mind does." The others laugh gently. Not loudly. Only enough to share the warmth of the moment. He lifts one hand. The skin is rough. Small scars cross his fingers. The muscles beneath his wrists are strong from years of steady labor. These hands have shaped thousands of stones. Each one seemed ordinary at the time. One block. Then another. Then another. Looking back across many years, those countless ordinary efforts have become something far greater than any single day's work. Perhaps civilizations are built in much the same way. Not through one great moment, but through millions of quiet moments that seem unimportant while they are happening. Across the river, another group of workers tends irrigation channels that carry precious water into nearby fields. The canals require constant attention. Mud slowly gathers. Plants sometimes block the flow. Small banks collapse after heavy flooding. Nothing dramatic happens. No great disaster announces itself. Instead, tiny changes appear little by little. The workers notice them. They repair them. The water continues flowing. Tomorrow another small repair may be needed. Then another next week. The work never truly ends. Yet no one expects it to. Maintenance is simply part of life. In many ways, Egypt itself is carefully maintained generation after generation. Parents maintain traditions. Farmers maintain the fields. Craftsmen maintain their tools. Neighbors maintain friendships. Priests maintain ceremonies. Scribes maintain records. Every person quietly protects a small part of the larger order. Together these ordinary efforts create remarkable stability. Not far away, a young apprentice follows his father through a workshop where copper tools are carefully sharpened. The boy carries a small basket filled with whetstones. His father selects one and begins drawing the edge of a blade across its smooth surface. Back and forth. Again. Again. Tiny sparks of sunlight catch the polished metal. The boy watches closely. His father says very little. There is no need for long explanations. The rhythm itself teaches. The angle of the blade. The pressure of the hand. The sound made by metal against stone. All these small details become lessons. Years from now the apprentice will likely stand in the same place, showing another child the very same movements. The workshop itself hardly changes. Its shelves hold familiar tools. Its walls carry the same scent of metal, leather, and wood. The doorway frames the same dusty street outside. Generations pass through this room, yet the work remains wonderfully familiar. This quiet continuity reaches beyond trades and households. It also shapes the appearance of the villages themselves. Most homes are built from the same sun-dried mud bricks. The walls are thick. The windows are small. Flat roofs catch the evening breeze after the day's heat has begun to fade. When a wall cracks, fresh mud repairs it. When part of a roof wears away, new reeds are laid across wooden beams. Homes slowly change as families grow, yet they continue to resemble the homes beside them. Walking through a village in Upper Egypt might feel surprisingly familiar to someone from another village many days away along the river. The details differ. The people differ. Yet the rhythm of daily life remains comfortingly alike. Children run through narrow lanes chasing one another between courtyards. An old woman sits spinning flax into thread. Goats rest beneath shaded walls. Bread cools beside open doorways. The scent of wood smoke drifts gently above the rooftops. These scenes repeat themselves across the valley year after year. Perhaps this is one reason travelers often found Egypt so orderly. The kingdom stretched for hundreds of miles along the Nile, yet much of life shared the same dependable rhythm. The river connected distant communities more closely than the desert separated them. Boats carried not only goods but also familiar customs. Songs traveled. Recipes traveled. Stories traveled. Craftsmanship traveled. Even ways of greeting neighbors moved quietly from village to village. The Nile became more than a river. It became the thread stitching together thousands of ordinary lives. As the afternoon slowly unfolds, the builders rise once again from their meal. There is still work to do before evening. They lift their tools. The steady sound of hammer against stone returns. Each strike echoes softly through the warm air. Nearby, a young laborer pauses for just a moment. He looks toward the river. The sunlight dances across its surface. A breeze stirs the reeds. For a few quiet breaths, everything feels perfectly still. Then he smiles almost without realizing it and returns to his work. There is comfort in knowing exactly what the day asks of him. He does not wonder whether tomorrow will bring completely different expectations. Tomorrow will begin before sunrise. He will wake. He will eat fresh bread. He will lace his sandals. He will greet familiar faces. He will lift familiar tools. Some might imagine such repetition would feel dull. Yet for many people living beside the Nile, it brought something precious. Security. The fields would need tending. The canals would need clearing. The boats would need repairing. The grain would need grinding. The children would need teaching. The elderly would need caring for. Each task connected naturally to the next. Life moved forward not through sudden leaps but through quiet, dependable steps. And as another warm afternoon stretches peacefully across the valley, the people of ancient Egypt continue living within a rhythm that has already endured for centuries, a rhythm shaped by river, sun, family, labor, and memory, flowing onward as gently and faithfully as the timeless waters of the Nile itself. As the afternoon slowly begins to soften, the sunlight changes almost without anyone noticing. The bright white light that rested over the valley through the hottest hours gradually becomes warmer. Palm trees cast longer shadows across the dusty paths. The walls of mudbrick homes glow with quiet shades of gold, while the wide river reflects the changing sky in gentle waves of amber and blue. The heat has not disappeared. It simply becomes easier to carry. A light breeze wanders north along the Nile, touching fields of barley and emmer wheat before slipping quietly through the narrow streets of the village. Workers pause for a moment. Some lift their faces toward the breeze. Others close their eyes for only a few heartbeats. The smallest comforts are often the most deeply appreciated. In ancient Egypt, people understood this well. A cool drink of water. A patch of shade beneath a sycamore tree. The sound of the river after a long day. Fresh bread shared with family. These simple gifts filled ordinary life with quiet contentment. Perhaps that is another reason change came slowly. When everyday life already held dependable comforts, there was less desire to seek something entirely different. Near one of the irrigation canals, two elderly farmers walk side by side. Their pace is slower than it once was. Their backs carry the memory of many seasons spent bending over rich soil. Neither man speaks for a while. They stop beside the canal and watch the water flowing gently between carefully shaped banks. One reaches down with a wooden stick, removing a handful of reeds that have begun to collect near the opening. The water immediately flows more freely. The other farmer nods. It is a tiny task. It takes only a few moments. Yet it matters. The fields beyond depend upon these small acts of care. Neither man expects praise. No one records their work. The canal simply continues doing what it has always done. Water moves forward. The crops receive what they need. Another quiet problem has been solved before it could become a larger one. This habit of tending small things before they become large is woven throughout Egyptian life. A cracked wall is repaired before it collapses. A worn basket is strengthened before it breaks. A loose roof beam is secured before the rainy season. Fishing nets are mended after each journey. Copper blades are sharpened before they become too dull to use. The people who live here understand that lasting strength often comes from steady attention rather than sudden effort. As the afternoon continues, a group of children gathers beneath the broad branches of a sycamore tree. The shade beneath its leaves feels wonderfully cool compared with the open fields. An elderly woman sits nearby with a basket resting beside her. Her hands are busy twisting thin strips of flax into strong cord. The children drift closer. One little girl watches the careful movement of the older woman's fingers. Another quietly asks how the cord becomes so even. The woman smiles warmly. She does not hurry her answer. Instead, she places the flax into the child's hands. "Feel it," she says softly. The child gently runs her fingers along the fibers. They are rough at first. The woman begins twisting them together. Slowly. Patiently. The rough strands become smooth. The loose fibers become one strong cord. The children watch with complete attention. No lesson is written. No formal instruction begins. Knowledge simply passes from one pair of hands to another. This is how so much learning happens. Through shared afternoons. Through quiet observation. Through patient repetition. The civilization grows not only through grand buildings but through ordinary conversations beneath trees. Nearby, a flock of ducks wanders toward the edge of the river. Their soft quacking drifts across the water. A young boy follows behind, carrying a long reed in one hand. He gently guides them away from a patch of growing vegetables before allowing them to continue toward the shallows. The ducks seem to know the path almost as well as the boy. They have walked it many times before. Even the animals move according to familiar routines. Goats know when evening feeding is near. Donkeys recognize the road leading home. Dogs wait beside workshops until their owners finish for the day. Life settles into habits that become almost invisible through repetition. The riverbank itself grows busier once more. Several fishermen prepare their boats for an evening journey. The afternoon breeze has become steadier now. They inspect each rope carefully. They tighten knots worn by many days upon the water. One man checks the woven fishing nets. A small tear catches his eye. He sits immediately upon the riverbank and begins repairing it. His fingers move quickly but without haste. Each knot is tied with care. He knows that one small tear ignored today may become a much larger problem tomorrow. The net deserves attention now, while the repair is still simple. The same careful thinking appears again and again throughout Egyptian life. Patient maintenance prevents greater hardship. This quiet wisdom has likely been spoken from parent to child for generations beyond counting. Farther downstream, a ferry slowly crosses the Nile. Its wide wooden deck carries several farmers, 2 donkeys, baskets of vegetables, and large clay jars filled with grain. The crossing is unhurried. The current gently guides the boat while the ferryman adjusts his long steering oar. The passengers know one another. Some exchange quiet greetings. Others simply enjoy the peaceful journey across the water. The river reflects drifting clouds overhead. Fish occasionally disturb the surface before disappearing once more. A kingfisher dives suddenly, returning to a nearby branch with its meal before becoming still again. Everything along the Nile seems to move with calm purpose. The river has witnessed countless crossings like this. Year after year. Century after century. Boats come and go. Children become adults. New families settle into old villages. The river continues flowing north without interruption. It remembers every generation while remaining wonderfully unchanged. Back in the village, the marketplace begins its slow transformation toward evening. Some merchants have already sold most of their goods. Clay jars stand empty where vegetables once rested. Bundles of flax have grown smaller. Fresh bread has nearly disappeared from woven baskets. The remaining merchants speak quietly as they gather their belongings. There is satisfaction in honest work completed. Tomorrow they will return. The same paths. The same stalls. The same familiar neighbors. There is comfort in knowing where one belongs. Inside a nearby weaving house, the day's final length of linen is carefully rolled and placed upon a wooden shelf. The women stretch their tired shoulders. One smiles as she examines the smooth cloth. It has taken many days to complete. No single hour seemed remarkable. Yet together those ordinary hours have created something useful and beautiful. One young weaver traces the cloth lightly with her fingertips. She remembers making small mistakes when she first began learning. Her grandmother corrected them patiently. Never with anger. Always with gentle encouragement. Now her own hands move confidently. She wonders if one day she will teach another young girl in exactly the same way. Without realizing it, she is already becoming another link in a chain that stretches backward through countless generations. As the sun slowly lowers toward the western desert, golden light settles across the valley like a soft blanket. The distant fields shimmer gently. Palm leaves glow around their edges. Mudbrick homes seem almost to shine. The entire landscape becomes quieter. Not because life is ending for the day, but because it is gently preparing for evening once again. Another ordinary afternoon is coming to its peaceful close. Another ordinary day has carried forward the habits, skills, and quiet traditions that have shaped Egypt for centuries. No single person notices history being preserved. No one pauses to say that they are protecting an ancient way of life. They simply continue baking, building, fishing, weaving, teaching, repairing, sharing meals, raising children, caring for neighbors, living as their parents lived before them. And as the warm evening breeze begins to drift once more across the timeless waters of the Nile, carrying with it the scent of fresh reeds, fertile earth, and distant cooking fires, the gentle rhythm of ancient Egypt continues forward almost exactly as it did yesterday, and almost exactly as it will again when another quiet sunrise welcomes the valley into a new day. The sun slowly lowers toward the western horizon, and the bright afternoon begins its gentle journey into evening once again. Nothing changes all at once. The warmth remains upon the stones beneath tired sandals. The fields still shimmer beneath the last strong rays of sunlight. The Nile continues to flow with the same calm confidence it has carried since long before the oldest stories were first told. Yet little by little, the valley begins to breathe more slowly. Workers notice the shadows growing longer across the irrigation canals. The calls of birds change as flocks begin returning to their resting places among reeds and palm branches. The wind carries a faint coolness that seemed impossible only a short while before. It is the quiet promise that another day's labor is nearly complete. Along a dusty path leading back from the fields, a farmer walks beside his oldest son. Neither speaks for several moments. There is no silence between them that feels uncomfortable. Their shared footsteps are conversation enough. Dust rises gently beneath their sandals before settling again behind them. The older man's shoulders are tired. His hands carry fresh traces of earth beneath every fingernail. The young boy walks with the slower, careful steps of someone still growing into the work of adulthood. He glances now and then toward his father, quietly noticing how he carries his tools. How he balances the wooden hoe across one shoulder. How he pauses beside a canal to check the water one final time before leaving. These small observations become lessons. The father does not announce that he is teaching. The son does not realize how much he is learning. One ordinary walk home becomes another page in an education that has no beginning anyone can remember. Many years from now, he may find himself making these same quiet checks without even thinking. The habits of one generation gently become the instincts of the next. Farther down the path, several women return from the river carrying full water jars. The weight is considerable. Yet their movements are steady and graceful. Each jar rests securely upon folded cloth balanced atop the head. Hands occasionally rise only to steady the load. Children walk nearby carrying much smaller containers. Some laugh softly. Others become distracted by dragonflies dancing above the reeds. An older sister gently reminds a younger brother to stay close. The path is familiar. Every family has walked it countless times. Its curves have been shaped by centuries of patient footsteps. As the women approach the village, familiar scents begin greeting them long before they reach home. Fresh bread. Wood smoke. Roasted onions. Warm lentils cooking inside clay pots. The smell of evening meals drifts gently through narrow lanes. It settles into clothing. It clings to walls. It becomes part of memory itself. Many years later, perhaps an elderly woman will catch the same scent from a nearby oven and remember evenings from her own childhood. Memory often travels through the senses. The smell of bread. The touch of cool river water. The sound of sandals across smooth stone. The feeling of warm evening wind moving through open courtyards. These quiet experiences remain with people long after individual days have faded. In one courtyard, a grandmother sits beneath a woven shade while preparing vegetables for the evening meal. Her knife moves slowly across a wooden board worn smooth through many years of use. Nearby, her granddaughter watches carefully. The older woman occasionally pauses. She explains why one vegetable should be cut differently from another. She points out how to recognize herbs by their fragrance rather than their appearance alone. The child nods. She tries. She makes small mistakes. The grandmother smiles gently and shows her again. No frustration enters her voice. There is time. There has always been time. Skills are not expected to appear in a single afternoon. They grow quietly, just as children themselves do. Across the village, a potter finishes shaping the final vessel of the day. The clay still feels cool beneath his hands despite the lingering warmth of the air. He studies the smooth curve of the jar before placing it carefully beside others waiting to dry. Some are large enough to hold grain through many months. Others are small cups meant for daily meals. Each one will eventually enter someone's home. Perhaps a family will use one vessel every single day for decades. Perhaps a child not yet born will drink from one of these cups. The potter cannot know. He simply shapes each piece with the same patient care. Good work deserves consistency. Nearby, a carpenter gathers his tools before closing the workshop. Each copper blade is cleaned. Each wooden handle is examined. Nothing is left carelessly upon the floor. The workshop itself is treated almost like another member of the household. It provides work. It provides purpose. It deserves respect. The apprentice sweeps away the day's wood shavings. He stacks small pieces neatly against one wall. Nothing useful is wasted. Tomorrow morning, these same tools will return to the craftsman's hands. The work will continue almost exactly where it ended today. That quiet continuity brings peace. There is no need to begin life anew each sunrise. One simply continues. The same careful hands. The same familiar tools. The same trusted knowledge. Along the riverbank, fishermen untangle their nets before preparing for another evening upon the water. The light has become wonderfully soft now. Golden reflections dance across the Nile. The current moves almost silently. One older fisherman sits cross-legged upon the shore repairing a section of net damaged earlier in the week. Beside him sits his young grandson. The boy asks why every broken knot must be repaired. The old man smiles without looking up from his work. If we care for the net today, he says quietly, the river will care for us tomorrow. The boy thinks about these words. He watches each careful knot. Years later, he may repeat the same sentence to another child. Simple wisdom often survives because it proves true. The old fisherman ties one final knot before gently stretching the net between his hands. Satisfied, he folds it carefully. Nothing more needs to be said. The river will soon decide whether tonight brings many fish or only a few. Either way, the fishermen will return again tomorrow. Patience is part of their calling. As twilight deepens, birds begin crossing the sky in graceful lines. Their wings catch the last sunlight before disappearing into darker shades of blue. The desert beyond the fertile valley slowly loses its color. Golden hills become soft gray silhouettes against the evening sky. The first bright star appears above the eastern horizon. A child notices it first. She points upward. Her younger brother follows her gaze. Soon several adults look up as well. No one rushes indoors. The evening sky has always invited quiet attention. The stars are familiar companions. Parents know their patterns. Grandparents knew them too. The heavens seem wonderfully dependable. Just as the Nile follows its ancient path, the stars follow theirs. Looking upward reminds people that they belong to a much larger order. An order older than kingdoms. Older than cities. Older even than memory. This feeling of belonging to something lasting shapes the heart as much as the mind. When the world itself appears steady, people often find comfort in preserving steady lives of their own. Perhaps this is one of the deepest reasons ancient Egypt remains so familiar across the centuries. Its people lived in daily conversation with rhythms that rarely changed. The rising sun. The flowing river. The returning flood. The cooling evening. The turning stars. Each reminded them that life unfolds most peacefully when lived with patience rather than haste. As darkness slowly gathers around the quiet village, lamps begin glowing inside humble homes. Families return once more to shared meals, gentle conversation, and well-earned rest. Outside, the Nile continues its endless journey northward beneath the sky filling steadily with stars, carrying with it the quiet reflections of palm trees, fishing boats, and mudbrick villages whose peaceful routines have endured for generations, flowing onward with the same calm certainty that has allowed ancient Egypt to remain wonderfully familiar to itself for so very long. Night settles fully across the Nile Valley with a quiet grace that asks for nothing. The last colors of sunset fade gently beyond the western desert, leaving behind a deep blue sky scattered with countless stars. Their light is soft, steady, and ancient. They have watched over these villages for longer than anyone living can imagine. They watched the grandparents of today's elders. They watched children who became parents, and parents who became memories. The stars remain. The river remains. The gentle rhythm of life continues beneath them. The village no longer carries the sounds of labor. The steady tapping of hammers has faded. The scraping of hoes through rich soil has become a memory for another day. Fishing boats move almost silently upon the dark water, while the homes along the river glow with the warm light of small oil lamps. Inside one modest house, a family prepares for sleep. The evening meal has ended. The clay bowls have been washed with careful hands. Fresh water has been poured into covered jars for the morning. A broom made from bundled reeds sweeps away the fine dust that gathered during the day. These final tasks are completed slowly. No one feels hurried. The work belongs to evening just as planting belongs to morning. Every part of the day has its own gentle purpose. A little boy struggles to keep his eyes open. He leans against his mother's shoulder while she folds a length of linen that has been drying since afternoon. His eyelids grow heavier with every passing moment. The quiet conversation between the adults becomes softer. Before long, the child is asleep without realizing it. His breathing becomes slow and even. His mother smiles gently before lifting him onto a woven sleeping mat. Children often surrender to sleep this way, carried gently by the steady rhythm of ordinary days. Outside, an older man climbs carefully onto the flat roof of his home. Many families choose to sleep beneath the open sky during the warmer months. The air above the rooftops is cooler than inside the house. A pleasant breeze moves across the village, carrying the scent of damp riverbanks and distant fields. The man spreads a woven mat across the roof before lying down. Above him stretches a sky so clear that every constellation seems close enough to touch. He has looked at these stars for many decades. As a boy, he searched for familiar patterns while listening to stories told by his father. Now, as an old man, those same stars return each night without fail. They have become quiet companions through every season of his life. He wonders briefly whether his grandchildren will one day lie beneath this same sky, remembering the stories he has told them. The thought brings him peace. Not because everything remains exactly the same. Children grow. Parents grow old. Villages slowly change. But some things continue. The river flows. The stars return. Bread is baked each morning. Fields are planted after the flood. Life gently carries itself forward. Across the village, another family gathers outside before sleep. An elderly grandmother sits upon a low stool while several children settle around her. She begins telling a story that her own grandmother once told. It is not a tale of great battles. It is not about distant kingdoms. Instead, it tells of a patient farmer who cared for his fields with kindness, respected the river, and never hurried the changing seasons. The children listen quietly. Some know the story already. That does not matter. Familiar stories offer comfort. Each telling feels like returning to a well-loved path. The words settle gently into the evening air. Before the story reaches its end, the youngest child has already fallen asleep with his head resting against his older sister. The grandmother notices and smiles. She lowers her voice even more. Stories have always been companions to sleep. Not because they are exciting, but because they gently prepare the mind for peaceful rest. Elsewhere, along the riverbank, two fishermen continue working beneath the moonlight. The moon casts a silver path across the surface of the Nile. Their small boat drifts quietly with the current. One man lowers a woven net into the water. The other watches the movement of the river. Neither speaks often. Words are unnecessary. The sounds around them are enough. The splash of water against the wooden hull. The distant call of a night bird hidden among reeds. The whisper of wind passing through papyrus. The quiet creak of rope against polished wood. These are sounds they have known since childhood. They do not disturb the silence. They become part of it. Fishing at night requires patience. Sometimes the nets return heavy. Sometimes they do not. The river cannot be hurried. It gives according to its own rhythm. The fishermen have learned to accept this with calm hearts. Perhaps that acceptance reaches beyond the river itself. Many parts of life cannot be rushed. Children grow in their own time. Seeds ripen in their own season. Clay hardens only when ready. Linen becomes cloth thread by thread. Stone becomes smooth strike by careful strike. Even wisdom arrives quietly after many ordinary years. This gentle understanding seems to rest beneath much of Egyptian life. Patience is not weakness. It is simply the natural companion of a world that moves according to the seasons. Near the edge of the village, a donkey sleeps standing beside a low wall. Goats rest together within a simple enclosure made from wooden poles and woven branches. A village dog circles 3 times before settling onto the cool earth. The animals know the rhythm of night just as surely as the people do. Everything gradually becomes still. Only the Nile continues its endless journey. Far downstream, another village is also preparing for sleep. Families there have finished their meals. Their lamps glow softly behind small windows. Their children dream upon woven mats. Their fishermen prepare for another quiet night upon the river. Though separated by many miles, the 2 villages share nearly identical evenings. The same bread. The same stars. The same breeze. The same gentle routines. This remarkable similarity stretches from one community to another all along the fertile ribbon of the Nile. The river quietly unites them. Travelers moving between villages often find familiar sights waiting at every stop. Mudbrick homes gathered close together. Palm trees rising above shaded courtyards. Clay ovens warmed before sunrise. Children carrying water jars. Old men repairing fishing nets. Women weaving linen beneath open doorways. The details differ. Faces change. Families grow. Yet the rhythm remains comfortingly familiar. This shared rhythm creates something stronger than walls or armies. It creates a common way of living. People understand one another because their days unfold in much the same manner. A farmer from one village can visit another and immediately recognize the work before him. A potter understands another potter's hands. A fisherman understands another fisherman's patience. Shared experience becomes a quiet language spoken throughout the valley. It binds people together without anyone needing to announce it. As the night deepens, oil lamps are gently extinguished one by one. Darkness settles softly across rooftops, courtyards, and narrow lanes. The village sleeps. Only a few distant sounds remain. A boat moving slowly along the river. The rustle of reeds touched by the wind. The quiet breathing of families resting after another full day. Tomorrow, before the first light reaches the eastern horizon, someone will wake to knead fresh dough. Someone will untie a fishing boat. Someone will step barefoot onto cool earth before slipping into familiar sandals. Someone will sweep yesterday's dust from a courtyard. Someone will begin teaching a child another small lesson that has already been passed through countless generations. And without anyone intending to preserve history, they will preserve it once again through ordinary kindness, careful work, patient hands, and peaceful routines that continue flowing from one sunrise to the next, as gently and faithfully as the timeless waters of the Nile beneath the quiet Egyptian stars. Before the first bird sings, before the eastern sky begins to brighten, ancient Egypt rests in one of its quietest moments. The village is wrapped in darkness, softened by moonlight and the pale glow of countless stars. The air has become cooler than it was during the long afternoon. The heat stored inside mud-brick walls slowly escapes into the night, leaving homes comfortable for sleeping families. Nothing seems to move. Yet the land is not truly asleep. The Nile continues its endless journey. Its gentle current slips past reeds, sandbanks, fishing boats tied securely along the shore, and fields waiting patiently for another sunrise. The river has no need to hurry. It has already crossed this valley for thousands of years, and it will continue long after every generation living tonight has become part of memory. This quiet certainty is difficult to notice when living beside it every day. People rarely stop to wonder whether the river will flow tomorrow. It simply does. That quiet reliability shapes the way they think about the world. Many parts of life feel dependable because the Nile itself feels dependable. Long before children understand the work waiting in the fields, they understand the comfort of hearing water flowing through the darkness. Many fall asleep to that familiar sound. Many wake to it. It becomes as ordinary as breathing. Inside one small home, a potter sleeps peacefully after another long day. His hands rest across his chest. Even in sleep, the skin of his fingers carries traces of fine clay that could not be completely washed away. Those hands have shaped hundreds of jars, hundreds of bowls, hundreds of simple cups that now rest inside homes throughout the village. He has never met every family using his work. He does not need to. Knowing that his vessels carry water, grain, oil, and bread is enough. His craft quietly serves people he may never know. There is satisfaction in work that becomes part of another family's ordinary life. Not far away, a woman who spent the day weaving linen also sleeps. Beside her rests a neatly folded length of cloth completed only yesterday. Tomorrow another piece will begin. The loom waits patiently. The thread waits patiently. Nothing asks to be finished immediately. The cloth grows one strand at a time. The work itself teaches patience. Every trade in Egypt seems to whisper the same lesson. Stone yields slowly. Clay dries slowly. Grain ripens slowly. Children learn slowly. Time itself becomes a trusted companion rather than an enemy. As the deepest hours of night continue, the sky begins changing almost too gently to notice. The stars remain bright. Yet somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, dawn has already begun its quiet approach. The first hint of light is invisible to sleeping eyes. Only those awake upon the river notice. Tonight, a small fishing boat still drifts quietly beneath the fading moon. Two brothers sit together near the stern. Their nets have been kind to them. Several fish rest inside woven baskets near their feet. They speak only occasionally. The silence between them is comfortable. After many years fishing together, words are often unnecessary. One brother points toward the eastern horizon. The other nods. Morning is coming. Soon they will return home before the village fully awakens. Their wives will prepare breakfast. Their children will still be rubbing sleep from their eyes. The fish caught tonight will appear upon family tables before the sun reaches its highest point. Everything follows its familiar order. There is comfort in knowing where each hour belongs. As the fishermen guide their boat toward shore, another figure is already awake. An elderly baker steps quietly into the cool darkness carrying a bundle of dry reeds. His oven must be prepared before anyone else begins stirring. He kneels beside yesterday's ashes and carefully arranges fresh fuel. Soon a small flame appears. It grows patiently. There is no need to force it. A good fire, like many good things, begins slowly. The baker sits nearby while the oven warms. He has repeated this same morning for more years than he can easily count. His father once did the same. Perhaps his grandfather as well. The oven itself has been repaired many times. Fresh clay covers old cracks. New bricks strengthen worn edges. It has aged alongside the family that cares for it. As the fire grows brighter, the baker begins mixing flour with water inside a large clay bowl. His movements are smooth and unhurried. His hands know exactly how the dough should feel. Too dry, and the bread becomes heavy. Too wet, and it loses its shape. These judgments come not from written instructions but from countless mornings spent beside this very oven. Experience lives inside his hands. Soon the first gentle smell of baking bread begins drifting through the still dark village. It is one of the earliest signs that another day has begun. A woman sleeping nearby stirs as the familiar scent reaches her doorway. Without opening her eyes, she knows the baker has started his work. Before long, others will wake as well. Bread has quietly become the morning's first greeting. In another home, a young apprentice opens his eyes while the stars are still visible overhead. Today he will spend another day beside a carpenter learning to shape wood. He is eager. Not because he expects to master the craft in a few weeks. He knows such things require years. Instead, he looks forward to learning one small skill after another. How to choose the straightest piece of timber. How to sharpen a blade without removing too much metal. How to smooth rough surfaces until they feel pleasant beneath the hand. Each lesson may seem tiny. Together they slowly create a craftsman. This patient way of learning reaches into every corner of Egyptian life. No one expects mastery to arrive quickly. No one becomes an expert overnight. Children become adults one day at a time. Apprentices become masters one careful lesson at a time. Villages become strong through one generation teaching the next. Even great monuments begin with a single stone carefully placed upon another. Perhaps this is one of the deepest reasons Egypt remained so wonderfully familiar for so long. The civilization trusted slow growth. It did not seek constant change. Instead, it valued careful improvement built upon strong foundations already tested by time. Outside, the eastern horizon finally begins showing the faintest ribbon of pale silver. The stars nearest the horizon quietly fade. Palm trees become dark silhouettes against the growing light. Birds remain silent for only a little longer. Then, almost as if answering an invisible signal, one small bird begins to sing. Another replies from farther along the river. Soon the morning chorus gently spreads across the valley. The village slowly awakens. A wooden door opens. Someone steps into the cool air carrying empty water jars. A donkey shakes its head before stretching stiff legs. A child yawns while rubbing sleepy eyes. The first loaf of fresh bread leaves the oven. Warm steam rises into the crisp morning air. The scent travels through narrow streets, inviting another ordinary day to begin. And once more, without fanfare or ceremony, the people of ancient Egypt step back into the familiar rhythm that has guided their parents, grandparents, and countless generations before them, a rhythm shaped not by sudden change, but by the quiet confidence that each sunrise brings another chance to live with patience, purpose, and gentle harmony beside the eternal Nile. The day has gently folded itself into another quiet evening. The last warm light has slipped beyond the western desert, leaving only a soft glow upon the horizon. One by one, the familiar sounds of the village have faded. The boats are tied securely along the riverbank. The tools have been cleaned and placed carefully where they will wait for another sunrise. The ovens have cooled. The fields rest beneath the growing darkness, and the gentle breeze carries the faint scent of reeds and warm earth across the valley. The Nile continues to flow. It asks for nothing. It promises nothing with words. Yet through countless generations, its quiet presence has offered something deeply comforting. Another season will come. Another flood will arrive. Another harvest will grow. Another child will learn from patient hands. Another family will gather beneath the evening sky. So much of ancient Egypt remained familiar not because time stood still, but because ordinary people found peace in the steady rhythms that connected one day to the next. Their lives were built from simple mornings. From bread baked before dawn. From sandals brushing dusty paths. From careful hands repairing what could still be used. From quiet conversations shared at sunset. From stories whispered beneath stars that seemed unchanged from one lifetime to another. Kings came and went. Cities slowly grew. Temples rose beside the river. Yet beneath every great achievement lived millions of ordinary moments that asked for no recognition. A mother teaching her daughter to knead dough. A father showing his son where the river current slowed. A potter shaping another humble bowl. A fisherman waiting patiently for the water to offer its gift. A scribe carefully tracing familiar symbols upon fresh papyrus. A child falling asleep while listening to an elder's gentle voice. These were the quiet threads that held an entire civilization together. They were rarely carved into stone. They were seldom remembered by name. Yet they endured because they lived inside everyday life. Perhaps that is the gentlest lesson the ancient Nile leaves behind. Lasting strength is often quiet. It grows slowly. It asks for patience. It is built through kindness repeated again and again, through work done with care, through families sharing ordinary days, and through communities trusting one another across the passing years. As night settles fully across the valley, the stars return to their familiar places. Their reflections shimmer softly upon the dark water. Palm leaves whisper in the gentle breeze. The reeds along the riverbank sway almost silently. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls once before becoming still. The village sleeps. Children dream upon woven mats. Parents rest after another day of honest work. The elderly breathe peacefully beneath open skies they have known all their lives. The Nile continues its endless journey northward, carrying moonlight upon its quiet surface just as it has for thousands of years. And now, as your own journey through ancient Egypt slowly comes to rest, you can leave the dusty roads, the warm mud-brick homes, the peaceful workshops, and the calm waters of the Nile exactly where they belong, resting quietly beneath a sky filled with ancient stars. May the gentle rhythm of the river remain with you. May the soft morning breezes, the quiet evenings, and the patient footsteps of countless ordinary people drift gently through your thoughts for just a little while longer. And as the ancient world grows more distant, becoming softer with every slow breath, the Nile continues to flow through the silence, calm and unhurried, until even its quiet murmur fades into the stillness of the night.